The boy stood at the edge of the dusty road with a paper bag clutched in his small hands, his shoes 2 sizes too big and held together by a strip of tape that had long since lost its stickiness, the afternoon sun pressing down on his thin shoulders like it knew he had nowhere else to go. His eyes were red, not just from crying, but from holding back tears for hours, because crying took energy, and he had already used most of his strength, saying goodbye to the only person who had ever loved him. The rancher noticed him not because he wanted to, but because something about the stillness of the child against the endless land felt wrong, like a misplaced shadow. The rancher was a man who had lived most of his life alone, not because he disliked people, but because the land had taught him that everything you love eventually leaves. Cattle get sold, seasons change, people disappear. He had learned to keep his heart as fenced as his fields. He slowed his truck, dust swirling behind him, and rolled down the window just enough to see the boy's face clearly. That was when the child spoke, his voice quiet but steady, as if he had practiced the sentence over and over in his head. "My mama died today," the boy said, not looking for sympathy, just stating a fact the way someone reports the weather. The rancher felt something tighten in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known in years. Before he could respond, the boy continued, "Can I spend a day with you, rancher?" The words were strange, unexpected, like a question without a reason, and yet they carried a weight that made the rancher step out of his truck. He asked the boy where he was going after today, and the boy shrugged. "They said someone will come for me tomorrow," he answered. "But today is just empty." That word, empty, echoed through the rancher's mind, because it described his own life better than he liked to admit. He hesitated, knowing that one day could turn into attachment, and attachment always ended in pain. But something in the boy's eyes looked like the last light before nightfall, and turning away felt like letting it go dark. So he nodded once and said, "You can ride with me for today." The boy climbed into the truck carefully, as if afraid the offer might disappear if he moved too fast. And as they drove toward the ranch, the silence between them was not uncomfortable but heavy, filled with unsaid things. The ranch stretched wide and golden, fences cutting the land into long, quiet lines, and the boy watched everything like it was a story unfolding just for him. At the house, the rancher showed him where to wash up and handed him a sandwich without asking if he was hungry. The boy ate slowly, savoring each bite, as if he didn't know when the next meal would come, and the rancher pretended not to notice, because noticing made it harder. They spent the afternoon walking the fields, the rancher explaining the names of tools and animals, the boy listening like every word mattered, asking questions not just to learn but to stay connected. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft orange and purple, the boy sat on the porch steps and finally cried, the kind of crying that shakes your whole body. And the rancher sat beside him, unsure what to do, until the boy leaned against his arm, trusting him without asking permission. That simple wait broke something open in the rancher's heart. He remembered holding his own son years ago, before sickness had taken both mother and child, leaving him with silence so loud it had chased everyone away. He had survived by building walls, but now a small boy had walked right through them. As night fell, the rancher prepared a bed in the spare room that hadn't been used in years. Dust rising as he pulled back the covers, memories pressing in. The boy stood in the doorway, clutching his paper bag, and asked softly, "I can sleep here, right? Just for today?" The rancher nodded, his throat too tight for words. Before turning out the light, the boy whispered, "Thank you for today." And the rancher realized that one day had already changed them both. As the house grew quiet, the rancher lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing tomorrow someone would come for the boy, and knowing that the emptiness he had learned to live with had already begun to feel unbearable again. If you're feeling this story in your heart right now, if moments like this remind you why kindness matters, don't forget to subscribe, because stories like these are meant to be shared, and the next chapter will change everything, noise or urgency, but with the soft kind of light that crept through dusty windows and rested gently on everything it touched, as if the world itself knew that something fragile was sleeping inside the house. The rancher woke before the sun, as he always did, but this time his first thought was not about cattle or fences or weather. It was about the boy in the spare room. For a moment, lying there in the quiet, he wondered if the previous day had been a dream, a story his lonely mind had created to fill the hollow space in his chest. But then he heard it, the faint sound of breathing, steady and real, coming from down the hall. It startled him how much relief that sound brought. He sat up slowly, rubbing his hands over his face, feeling older than usual, not in years but in memory. The boy's words echoed in his mind. "My mama died today." And the rancher realized he had carried those words with him through the night, like a weight he didn't want to put down. He got dressed quietly and went to the kitchen, making breakfast for two without thinking about it. Cracking eggs, heating bread, pouring milk into a chipped glass that had belonged to his son long ago. When the boy appeared in the doorway, hair messy, eyes still heavy with sleep, he hesitated as if unsure whether he was allowed to be there. And the rancher smiled, an unfamiliar feeling stretching his face, and said, "Morning, sit, you're just in." "Time." The boy sat at the table, his hands folded in his lap, watching every movement like he was afraid the rancher might change his mind and ask him to leave. They ate in a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand conversation, and when the boy finished, he looked up and asked, "What happens today?" The rancher knew what the question really meant. He swallowed and answered honestly, "Someone will probably come for you." The boy nodded, absorbing it quietly, then said, "Can we still do ranch things until then?" That simple request carried so much hope that the rancher couldn't say no, even though every minute they spent together felt like borrowing time he wouldn't be able to give back. They went outside, the morning air cool and clean, and the rancher showed the boy how to feed the horses, how to move slowly so they wouldn't spook, how to rest a hand on their necks so they knew you meant no harm. The boy listened carefully, doing everything exactly as instructed, and when one of the horses nudged him gently, he laughed, a sound so pure and unexpected that the rancher had to turn away so the boy wouldn't see the tears rising in his eyes. They worked together, fixing a loose fence post, checking the water troughs, walking the land side by side, and with every shared task, something invisible but strong was forming between them, like roots growing beneath the surface. Late morning came, and with it the sound of a car on the long dirt road leading to the ranch. The boy froze. He didn't say anything, but his body stiffened, his eyes fixed on the dust cloud in the distance. The rancher felt his heart drop. He had known this moment was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. The car pulled up, and two people stepped out, a woman with a clipboard and a man with a polite but distant expression. They introduced themselves gently, explaining they were there to take the boy to a temporary home until arrangements could be made. The boy stood very still, his small hand brushing against the rancher's sleeve as if asking permission without words. The rancher knelt beside him and said quietly, "They're here to help you." The boy looked up at him, eyes wide and shining, and asked the question that would haunt the rancher forever if he didn't answer it honestly. "Do I have to go right now?" The woman hesitated, then nodded softly. The boy's shoulders sagged, and for the first time since arriving at the ranch, he looked like a child carrying something too heavy. He turned to the rancher and whispered, "Thank you for yesterday. It was the best day." Those words hit harder than any goodbye. As they walked toward the car, the rancher felt something inside him, rebel against the idea of letting this child disappear into the system, into a world of temporary places and unfamiliar faces, the same kind of world that had swallowed him after he lost his own family. He remembered the nights he had spent alone, wishing someone would choose him not out of duty, but out of love. The boy paused by the car and turned back one last time. "Can I come visit?" he asked. The rancher opened his mouth, ready to say yes, ready to promise anything, but the woman gently explained that visits would need approval, schedules, permissions. The boy nodded, understanding more than a child his age should have to. As the car door opened, Something inside the rancher finally broke through. The walls he had built over years of grief and fear. He straightened, his voice steady but his hands shaking. "Wait," he said. Everyone turned to look at him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him, but also feeling a strange sense of rightness he hadn't felt in decades. "I've got the space. I've got the means. And I know what it's like to lose everyone," he said, his eyes never leaving the boy's face. "If he needs somewhere to stay, he can stay here." The woman blinked. Surprised, the man exchanged a glance with her, and they began explaining the process, the paperwork, the inspections, the temporary nature of such arrangements. The rancher nodded through it all, barely hearing the words, because he was focused on the boy, who was staring at him like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "You mean I don't have to go today?" the boy asked. The rancher walked over, knelt in front of him, and placed his hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "You asked if you could spend a day with me," he said softly. "I thought about it all night, and I realized you don't need just a day." The boy's lip trembled. "So, I can stay?" The rancher swallowed hard, emotion tightening his chest, and answered with the words that changed both their lives forever. "You can stay forever." The boy threw his arms around him without hesitation, holding on like he was afraid letting go would make it disappear. And the rancher held him back, stronger this time. Not like someone borrowing time, but like someone choosing a future. The officials smiled quietly, touched by the moment, and began explaining the next steps. But their voices faded into the background as the rancher and the boy stood there, holding on to each other in the middle of the dusty ranch road, the wide open land stretching around them like it was welcoming something new. That afternoon the ranch felt different, not quieter or louder, but fuller. The boy helped make lunch, spilled milk and laughed about it, and the rancher realized that the house, once a place of echoes, now carried warmth again. As the sun set, they sat on the porch together, the boy leaning against him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Mama would have liked you," the boy said softly. The rancher closed his eyes, letting the words sink in, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known was still possible. He understood then that family wasn't always something you were born into. It was something you chose, something you built one moment of kindness at a time. And as the stars began to appear, the rancher knew that the emptiness he had lived with for so long had finally been replaced with purpose. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that one act of compassion can change a life forever, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because more stories like this are waiting to be told, and sometimes the next story might change you too.